The Supreme Court is now at the center of a political storm that could redefine presidential authority for generations. This week, the justices declined to immediately allow President Trump to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook and scheduled arguments on his sweeping new tariff plan. These cases go beyond policy. They challenge the very limits of presidential power. The court's decision to hold full hearings rather than act on emergency requests signals a pivotal moment. The outcomes will shape the economy, government stability, and the balance of power between branches. As the nation watches, the justices prepare to deliver rulings that will set precedents for decades. To truly grasp the Supreme Court case at hand, we must first understand the concept of tariffs and their far-reaching impact on the economy and society. Tariffs are essentially taxes placed on imported goods. Their main purpose is to make foreign products more expensive, which in theory encourages consumers to buy domestically produced items instead. This is meant to protect local industries and jobs, and sometimes to address national security concerns. However, while tariffs can shield certain sectors, they often come with a cost. Prices for everyday goods can rise, hitting consumers' wallets. Businesses that rely on imported materials may also face higher expenses, which can lead to layoffs or even closures. And when one country imposes tariffs, others often retaliate, escalating into a trade war that can disrupt global supply chains. President Trump's proposed tariffs are unprecedented in their scope and ambition, targeting a vast array of goods from multiple countries. This marks a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, with the administration arguing that such measures are necessary to protect American interests. Supporters claim these tariffs are a long overdue correction to unfair trade practices that have disadvantaged American workers and industries for decades. But critics warn that these actions could provoke global retaliation, leading to higher costs for American farmers, manufacturers, and ultimately, consumers. The legal challenge now before the Supreme Court centers on a fundamental question. Does the president have the authority to impose such sweeping tariffs without explicit approval from Congress? Or has he overstepped constitutional boundaries? Traditionally, the power to regulate international commerce has rested with Congress, reflecting the checks and balances built into the U.S. system of government. Now, the Supreme Court must decide where presidential power ends and legislative authority begins, a decision that could set a precedent for generations. The outcome of this case will ripple through the U.S. economy, affecting not just trade policy, but also America's relationships with its allies and competitors around the world. The stakes are high. The court's ruling could either expand the executive branch's power over trade or reaffirm Congress's central role in shaping economic policy. The decision will directly impact prices, jobs, and the future of American industry, influencing how the nation competes on the global stage. As the nation watches and waits, the Supreme Court's verdict could reshape not only economic policy, but also the balance of power in Washington for years to come. The second major case at the heart of this legal battle centers on President Trump's unprecedented attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, a move that has sent shockwaves through Washington and the financial world. The Federal Reserve was intentionally designed to operate independently from the White House, with its governors shielded from political interference and protected from being fired for partisan reasons. President Trump cited unproven allegations as justification for Cook's removal, but many observers and critics argue that the real motivation was her opposition to his economic policies and her independent stance on monetary issues. In a significant ruling, a federal judge blocked the firing, stating that the for-cause protections for Fed governors only apply to their conduct while in office, not to any past accusations or unrelated controversies. The administration, however, is pushing back, arguing that the courts have no authority to review presidential decisions to remove top officials, nor can they force the president to reinstate someone he has dismissed. This case is about far more than just one person's job. It's a pivotal test of whether independent agencies like the Fed can truly operate free from political pressure, or if presidents can remove officials simply for disagreeing with them. If the Supreme Court sides with Trump, it could set a precedent allowing future presidents to fire agency leaders over policy disputes, potentially undermining the very independence these agencies were created to protect. The Supreme Court's decision to take up the case and hold a full hearing signals just how high the stakes are, and sets the stage for a landmark ruling that could reshape the balance of power in Washington. The outcome of this case could fundamentally alter the structure of the federal government, changing how independent agencies function and how much control presidents have over them. As the nation waits for the court's decision, the future of agency independence and the checks and balances that define American democracy hangs in the balance. The Supreme Court's recent reliance on the shadow docket, fast, often unexplained emergency rulings, has shaped major policies. Since Trump's inauguration, the court has granted most of his administration's urgent requests, allowing controversial actions to proceed before full review. Critics argue this undermines transparency and the judicial process. Now, by scheduling full hearings on the Cook and Tariff cases, the court signals a shift toward more deliberative, public decision-making. This move could restore trust in the court's role as a check on executive power. This Supreme Court term marks a shift from emergency orders to final, binding decisions on presidential power. The justices will rule on the tariff plan, the firing of Lisa Cook, and other cases challenging executive authority. A decision favoring the administration could overturn decades of precedent and expand presidential control over independent agencies. The court may also address issues like birthright citizenship and campaign finance, further testing the limits of executive power. These rulings will define the constitutional boundaries of the presidency for generations. The stakes are immense. The court's decisions will shape the balance of power in American government. The nation awaits answers that will guide future presidents and protect or reshape our democracy. These Supreme Court cases aren't just legal battles. They'll impact your daily life. If the president gains broad tariff authority, everyday goods could become more expensive, from electronics to cars. Retaliatory tariffs could hurt American farmers and factory workers, risking jobs and livelihoods. The Federal Reserve case affects your financial stability. If the president can fire Fed governors for policy disagreements, the central bank's independence and your savings are at risk. Expanding presidential power over federal employees could politicize government services, affecting everything from tax returns to safety inspections. Voting rights and districting decisions could change the power of your vote. The court's rulings will shape the rules of our democracy and touch every aspect of American life. What happens in these cases will be felt in your wallet, your rights, and your future. The Supreme Court faces one of its most consequential terms in modern history. The decisions made in the coming months will not only shape the current political landscape, but also set precedents that could last for decades. Every American, whether they follow politics closely or not, will feel the impact of what happens next. Full hearings on Trump's tariff plan and the attempt to remove a Federal Reserve governor are just the start. The court is also considering cases that touch on the limits of executive authority, the independence of federal agencies, and the boundaries of presidential power. The justices will decide whether the presidency becomes more powerful or if checks and balances are reaffirmed. Their rulings could redefine how much control the president has over the economy, national security, and even the daily lives of citizens. A win for the administration could let future presidents act unilaterally on trade, regulation, and more. It could open the door for sweeping changes without congressional approval, shifting the balance of power in Washington. A ruling against could reinforce Congress's and the court's oversight. It would send a clear message that no branch of government is above the law, and that the system of checks and balances remains strong. These cases set the legal guardrails for executive power and accountability. They determine how far a president can go before being checked by other branches, and what recourse citizens have if those limits are tested. At stake is the rule of law. Whether the president is subject to the same constraints as everyone else, or if new exceptions are carved out for the highest office in the land. The public's faith in democracy and the judiciary hangs in the balance. People across the country are watching closely, knowing that these decisions will affect not just politicians but families, workers, and communities everywhere. These decisions aren't just about Trump or tariffs, they're about the future of American democracy. They will influence how government serves its people, and how power is distributed for years to come. The court's rulings will echo for generations, shaping the rights, freedoms, and responsibilities of all Americans long after today's headlines fade.